Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is going to be Timothy Wyllie. And we're going to be discussing one of his books, Confessions of a Rebel Angel. This is, like I said, only one of his books. He's got a whole storyline of this and some other books as well. But this is the one we're choosing to talk about today. It's a very extremely in-depth book. Has a lot of detail, tells a really long story going on here, so there's a lot to take in, but we're going to give you a little briefing on this tonight. So, Timothy, how you doing tonight?
Good, thank you, Roy. Thanks so much for having me on and giving me a chance to get into talking about Confessions of a Rebel Angel, which I haven't really had much of a chance to talk about on radio shows before, so I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for being on my show. I'm always looking for great guests with great material. Now, before we get started, though, I don't want to forget to mention to everybody that if they want to learn more about you and your books, they can go to www.timothywyllie.com. And if you want to call in, the call-in number is 832-632-7904, or you can come to www.talknowradio.com and get in the chat room and ask questions in chat. Of course, to use the chat room, you have to be a member. Sign up is free, and it's only there to keep the spam bots out for a better experience for all the people that are in there. So, Timothy, this here book, from what I understood reading it, this is really not the first in the series, is it?
Well, in a sense it is, and in a sense it isn't, Royce. And the way it isn't is that I've never written before in collaboration with a discarnate entity. Because, I've channeled before, I've transmitted before, I've done some automatic writing, but I've never really got into a collaborative relationship where I can work with, or at least basically, I think that Georgia, who is the rebel angel I'm collaborating with, she's the senior partner of the relationship in that sense. But she's kind of most respectful of me as well. And in another sense, it actually is the apogee of a long 35-year exploration of the angelic intelligence and the telepathic dolphin intelligence and extraterrestrials, after I had a near-death experience in 1973, which really alerted me to the fact that, we live in a very small part of the overall spectrum. And when I came back, I sort of decided, well, there's enough people looking after this reality, let me have a look at the other realities. And that started a whole series of books. And this is, I think, probably the 8th or 9th of the books I've written, but it's the first of this series of confessions with this rebel angel. The second is actually coming out in October of this year, and I just heard the publishers accepted the third one for next year. So it's a continuing tale. And as you say, Royce, it's a 500,000-year tale, and integrated into my own biography as told by the angel who has been observing my life, or my lives, I should say. So that's a very brief summary of a very complex issue.
Yeah, that's the one thing I did notice was the story did alternate between her story of the falling angels and your story of your biography. I was sure you had a reason you wanted it, put in that kind of format, but it was it really kind of like they were both following a similar, or a sort of a similar trend, in as much as they were both about learning from karma and consequences.
Yes, absolutely. It was a bargain I made with Georgia, because it was a very interesting coming together. I had wanted to tell the story of the rebellion among the angels starting about 20 years ago. And I had, I think, 3 goes at it, and I just couldn't find the voice. I couldn't find the entry point for trying to tell this enormous story in a way that sort of people could grok, people could understand. So when I got together with Georgia, when Georgia got together with me, I should say, about 8 or 10 years ago, I found that what she wanted to do, she wanted to examine her 500,000 years on the planet from the point of view of what went right and what went wrong. How have we landed up in this situation? And I said, oh, okay, maybe that's the voice I'm looking for. But let me make a bargain with you, Georgia, I said. And since you've been around observing my life, why don't you tell my life from your point of view? Which, of course, is fascinating from my viewpoint, because I'm discovering things I had no idea about. The sort of stuff that happens behind one's back and over the course of a long life that you have no idea about. So it's very interesting from my point of view. But from the book's point of view, what it does is it grounds the sort of information that she's dealing with, because she's dealing with these long attention spans, long time periods, and it needs a bit of grounding. So she intersperses my story with hers in what I think is quite an ingenious way. And as you say, there is a kind of parallel going on, which I have no idea about, of course. I don't plan these books out. She writes them. I just keep up with it.
Well, have you yet to this day to find out what the joke is, a little private joke about the me and host?
No, I haven't. I haven't yet. And she still is like... I didn't know if you ever saw that Australian film about that bus with the drag queens. But there's a running joke in that of a guy pushing a pram that's always running, and it's never referred to, but you always see it over sort of 5 or 6 times.
Well, one of the things that really struck out to me was when she was telling all the stories about Caligestra, I'm probably mispronouncing his name, and Lucifer and Satan and all them, was no matter how bad the deeds that they were doing at any given time, she never struck a judgmental pose in the way she was relating the story.
No, I don't find the angelic voice is one of judgment. It is one of understanding. Even if something is really awful, the angelic intelligence seeks to understand why and how it got to be that awful, as opposed to merely castigating it for being awful, for having a judgment. I'm glad you picked up on that, Rose. Yes, I think it's quite true. She's pretty objective, although she does have quite an acerbic tongue on her every once in a while. I think when she's doing some of her little kind of analyses of various different rebel angels who've incarnated over the past. But as you say, I think she's very non-judgmental on the whole.
And she was pretty well equally as non-judgmental, or actually she was equally as non-judgmental with your mishaps and your, misjudgments that you were making, the ones that we all make in our youth, you know what I'm saying?
We certainly do. I think she laughs at me, or laughs with me a little bit. If that's a judgment, I don't know. No, what's interesting, of course, is that as a young person, one sets out to do something, having a particular concept in one's mind. But from her point of view, of course, a whole lot of other things are going on, which she understands. I didn't realize, for instance, that I was having to deal with my fear of heights when I climbed up out of on that crane, out on the jib. But it was her who actually, related it back, to a fear of heights, which wasn't something in my mind. So it's full of those sort of little revelations. But what I would hope is that, it would encourage other people to take the idea seriously that we live life as a collaborative effort with our angels. And of course it becomes much more interesting if one's in contact with one's angels, because they have a far wider viewpoint, a far wider framework to work in. So one kind of tends to know where to be at the right time.
Well, that's one of the interesting things about this is the book is pointing out that we're working collaboratively with our angels, even when we're not aware that we're working with them.
Yes, I think that's probably the state of most of us most of the time. When I first got in touch with my angels back in the early 80s, I, like a lot of people, when they get into something, was asking the angels everything. It took me 2 years basically of journaling to sort of really find out about them and talk to them, and then I sort of started to say, well, should I do this, should I do that, and after a while, of course, the angel said, well, listen, you're the one down there, you're the one making the decisions. We're not going to make decisions for you. What we can do is we can point you in the right direction, but we can't make decisions for you. It's up to you. So it's, at this point now, having been working in this realm for about the last 35 years or so, my sense is that, I just simply have faith that they're there and they're poking me in the right direction when I need to go in that. And apart from that, I just follow my own intuition.
Well, that's a pretty big leap from where you were earlier in your life, as Georgia is relating, like when you had that accident with, I want to say her name was Jeannie, or I'm forgetting her name exactly, in that car with you, that old rattletrap type of car that they pulled you out. At that point in time, you did not even believe in angels.
I certainly did not, no. Like a lot of, too clever by half young lads, I gave up on God and religion when I was 11. I thought the whole thing was rubbish. So I became really quite a sort of a confirmed atheist, rationalist kind of person. So when that little crash, I think I had that crash when I was about 17 and a half or 18 with a girlfriend of mine at the time, Jenny. And it was, as you say, a rattletrap. It was one of those deux chevaux Citroen cars. I don't know if you ever saw them over here. They look like tiny little Nissan huts. And they rattle along. And, we had this crash. It wasn't my fault. I was actually trying to avoid hitting somebody who was, doing something absurd. And we turned over, I think probably 3 or 4 times, and the car pancaked flat. It was very flimsy. And when I woke up after about a minute and a half, the wheels were still going round on the car. It was upside down. I felt myself, I was all fine. I was about sort of 10 feet or 12 feet away from the car. Jenny was on the other side of the car, about the same distance away. And there was no way we could have gotten out of that car. I mean, it puzzled me for years and years. The windows of the dish are only about sort of 8 inches high, and they're just on little flaps. I had no idea until I started working with my angels, and thank God they said, well, when I came to meet this particular group of angels called the Midwayers, who are sort of midway between between humans and the high angels, when I first came to meet them, they said, well, you've come across us before. And I said, oh, wow. And they said, well, we pulled you out of that car crash, when you were 18. Oh, my goodness, of course, it blew my mind.
Well, the first thing I'd want to mention here is I'm happy to see my memory wasn't totally lost. I did remember Jean when she was close to Jenny.
Yes, no, very well done. Good, yes.
And the second thing I want to notice or mention here is when I was reading about the Midwayers being kind of like halfway between human and angelic, I picture a kind of like a ghostly or a ethereal or astral form that a person could see under the right circumstances. Am I far off with that?
Well, I think I could sort of, polish it down a little bit. I think probably that's more towards the sort of spirit world. The Midwayers are pretty, they're very real creatures. They're as real as us in their own particular dimension, and that dimension is pretty close to us, somewhere probably in the ultraviolet range, I would imagine. They're not perceptible by us. They can perceive us. They're kind of an emergency core of angels because they can intervene, they can interact with this reality. They were the ones who, for instance, pulled the millstone aside from Christ's cave where he was, where he was lying. And they step in various situations, when they're required and when the person perhaps has some destiny that is being cut short by some untoward accident of some sort, they'll step in. And some people have experiences of them in their life. They often look, when they do appear like quite ordinary people, sometimes young men. They often have rather blue eyes, Yeah.
Okay, now, midwayers and angels, they have to follow a sort of a prime directive, if I understand your book correctly. I mean, they may not, acknowledge it as a prime directive, but pretty much they can't interfere with human choice for the most part. Is that correct?
No, yes, that is quite correct, yes. Yes, they can't. Well, with the exception perhaps of a situation like the one I just described where they're called to, remedy a situation that otherwise would have, continued perfectly fine. No, angels especially can't and don't interact with this reality. They can appear under very unusual circumstances, but they can't make things happen. They can't, shift things around, if you like. They do appear in dreams, of course, and that's probably the area of main contact. But they also, get in touch with us for our intuitions. That's really how they operate.
Yeah, I would think that on the part of an angel, that would be pretty extremely important, because any kind of influence at all could really change the outcome of what you're going to learn in any given situation or how you're going to develop.
Yes, I mean, they seek to adhere to, as you say, a divine plan. Now, we're given the freedom of choice, which means we can veer off the divine plan. But in fact, the divine plan always brings us back, just like gravity always pulls us down. We're always drawn back to our destiny, even though we can screw up along the way. That's really the sort of reconciliation between free choice and predestination.
Now, at what point, or, how far back in time was it that you, because according to this book, you did not know for a long time, in other words, that Georgia was watching you and had plans where you were concerned. Roughly about at what point and how did you find out about her presence and what her plans were?
Georgia started first appearing in my life in my late 30s. And I spent about 10 years very confused. Firstly, I thought it was the Jungian term, the anima, my female aspect coming forward. And that, I spent quite a lot of time under that situation. And then as we got to know each other better and better, she started revealing who she really was. And then we kind of started negotiating. Because, of course, it's a pretty terrifying thought, in a sense, that one is so much involved with, one of the Luciferic angels. But as I've come to understand her, there is a path of redemption which has been open to rebel angels, which is to come into mortal incarnation and live a life as a human being, in a sense, being able to experience the consequences of the choices made so many thousands of years ago. Now, Georgia hasn't come into incarnation yet, or I believe not. She hasn't told me if she has. So she's operating, in a fourth and fifth dimension. I'm lucky in a sense, because of my near-death experience and because of my peculiar sensitivities, that I am able to sustain this very long stretch of writing, collaborating with an entity, that I only hear and relate to in that way.
Now, you've had some past life experiences by now, haven't you?
I've had what?
Some past life recall?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Pretty well all through my life I've had situations which have popped up. And of course for a long time one dismisses them and thinks these are coincidences or deja vu or something like that. But sooner or later they get your attention, don't they? I've never been past life regressed. I don't really buy that one, because my sense is that the only reason really the past lives are relevant is that if we have done something in the past life that we have not attended to, which has come through in this life, which has needed attention. And it's much more important to know why one's paying attention to something that came out of the blue, but actually came from a past life. And there are other lives in which, there are tremendous parallels, whereby I've been able to do something that in a past life I wasn't able to do, play a particular kind of music that I was forbidden to do in a past life, for instance. That sort of thing. So what I see is that this current life is really the accumulation, the drawing together of all the previous lives. So one can sort of put everything in place, get one's soul together, and get ready to move on, and pass on as much information as one can on the way.
Okay. Now, these angels that have rebelled, and even the ones that have not, none of them would be the ancient aliens from time past. They're different, separate beings altogether. Is that correct?
They are basically different, yes, because you can think of the multiverse as being divided on one very broad division, and that is between the inner and the outer worlds. The inner worlds, which are reached through our imaginations, used correctly, and through the chakras, through the portals of the chakras, are the realms of the angels. They, in a sense, administer from the inner worlds. The outer worlds are the worlds that we perceive with our senses, and, if we have higher senses, we perceive them too. We're conveniently called, say, third density intelligent life, which is basically the bottom of the intelligence pit, when evolution switches from animal consciousness to mortal consciousness. Right? So, obviously we're one of an enormous number of planets, and growing growing intelligent life is a very well understood process. And, it happens in a fairly ordered way. And it would have happened in a very ordered way around here had not there been a rebellion among the ancients.
Yeah.
Particularly a very small segment of a very large multiverse. So it's a segment of 1,000 inhabited planets, and only 37 of those planets went with the rebels, and we are one of those planets.
Yes, I was reading that in the book. But we have been getting visited from other planets during this, since the rebellion. Is that correct?
Not nearly as much as we were before the rebellion. Yeah, we would tend to be rather quarantined, so we have had some somewhat sneaky interventions over the years, but it's rather frowned on by the powers that be. Some South African stuff, some Pleiadian, but they're generally missions of mercy, some Syrian interference, some Orion stuff. Yeah. Well, in one level, this planet is a sort of a marketplace, it's a meeting place for an awful lot of extraterrestrial life. I don't know where we're at the moment, but certainly we've got between 75 and 100 extraterrestrial races currently observing us, as I'm sure you know, waiting for the big one, because something is going to happen very soon. No one knows when, but it is going to be quite amazing, and it's, between you and me, it's going to be absolutely wonderful.
Now, are the rebel angels and the midwayers still trying to manipulate us here on Earth, or has that kind of been curved back?
Yeah, that's been curved back. The midwayers, there are a pretty limited number of them, only about 60,000 or 70,000 of them. And one of Christ's occulted missions was to remove the rebel midwayers. And there was something like 40,000 out of 50,000 of them were rebels. So they were taken off planet for some re-education, which meant that sort of for the last 2,000 years we've been pretty bereft of midwayers. They are coming back now. The rebel angels themselves are being given the opportunity to redeem themselves. So I think that the worst of them really are just messing around with themselves at the moment. I don't see any of them having much impact on world affairs.
And what about Caligestra? Is he still trying to, keep things going his way, or did he finally convert or give up, or?
No, he's been removed.
Being removed. So he's not taken out yet, but he's in the process.
Well, as far as I know, he was removed some years ago. He hasn't been around that I know about. I've not heard anything of him.
But the problem is the damage is already done, and the recovery could take time.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, on that level, yeah. I mean, what we're doing is we're trying to come out of a 203,000-year dark ages, if you think of it that way. And, things like this don't turn on a dime. I think things began really changing probably somewhere in the 80s. And for some communications I had with my angels that I wrote in my first book, it's called Dolphins, ETs, and Angels, they said, listen, the change is upon you, but there is going to be a lot of difficulties before you break through. Think of it this way. There's a lot of pus that's being gathered in the body of the world. There's been a lot of corruption, and all that has to come to the surface to be released. And of course, over the last 3 years, we have seen a lot of that. We saw the wall coming down. We saw apartheid going. Now we're seeing the Roman Catholic Church revealing itself. So the process is happening. It's also going to be much more gentle than I think a lot of the apocalyptic thinkers believe. It's just going to go on like this, in a sense, while people see more and more closely that there is no purpose in casting ill on others, There's going to be more understanding of the universal law. Treat others as you would like to be treated yourself. It's such an obvious thing, but it takes a long time to get through all that darkness we've been shrouded with, the distrust of ourselves, the distrust of our governments, the distrust of our parents, the distrust of our children. I mean, my God, we're living in a well of fear most of the time.
Yeah, for my way of thinking, and I could be wrong about this, it seems to me, and I'm speaking from the perspective of a father of 3 boys myself, and I relate the Heavenly Father to like our Father, like we are over our children. That I noticed raising my kids that punishment, because so many people, especially in the church, like to view God as a punishing God. But punishment really doesn't correct behaviors. It never has. It never did for me. It might have temporarily stopped something that was out of control, but it never really corrected anything. The actual teaching is what was really the corrector, and that was a slow, gradual process. So what would be the benefit of an apocalypse?
No, I wouldn't see any benefit whatsoever. No, the way I look at it is that, this planet is a kindergarten for the noisy souls, uppity souls, to learn the best and the worst of themselves. There's no point in the kids learning down at kindergarten,
But yet, what everybody's looking for is this end-time Armageddon that I don't see. I'm like you. I don't see what purpose it would serve.
No, it's a lazy way of thinking about things. Firstly, if you believe in a God of love, it's a little strange, to believe that, an apocalypse is on the roster. But mainly it's a sort of, let's just get out of this, okay, we're going to heaven, let's just go. Somewhat the sort of same consciousness as a suicide bomber, as a matter of fact. I know people probably won't be very happy to hear that, but it's pretty much the same idea when you think about it. Let's blow it all up and get it all over with.
Well, I've been known to say a few things that people weren't real happy about, but I don't think you can always avoid it.
No, it's only speaking the truth.
But I didn't want to run out of time to mention your other book, and I don't have it right in front of me, so I'm going to ask you to help me with the title. The one I told you I hadn't got a chance to, www.timothywyllie.com. And if you want to call in, the call-in number is 832-632-7904, or you can come to www.talknowradio.com and get in the chat room and ask questions in chat. Of course, to use the chat room, you have to be a member. Sign up is free, and it's only there to keep the spam bots out for a better experience for all the people that are in there. So, Timothy, this here book, from what I understood reading it, this is really not the first in the series, is it?
Well, in a sense it is, and in a sense it isn't, Royce. And the way it isn't is that I've never written before in collaboration with a discarnate entity. Because, I've channeled before, I've transmitted before, I've done some automatic writing, but I've never really got into a collaborative relationship where I can work with, or at least basically.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be Timothy Wyllie, and we're going to be discussing one of his books, Confessions of a Rebel Angel. This is, like I said, only one of his books. He's got a whole storyline of this and some other books as well. But this is the one we're choosing to talk about today. It's a very extremely in-depth book, has a lot of detail, tells a really long story going on here, so there's a lot to take in, but we're going to give you a little briefing on this tonight. So, Timothy, how are you doing tonight?
Good, thank you, Roy. Thanks so much for having me on and giving me a chance to get into talking about Confessions of a Rebel Angel, which I haven't really had much of a chance to talk about on radio shows before, so I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for being on my show. I'm always looking for great guests with great material. Now, before we get started, though, I don't want to forget to mention to everybody that if they want to learn more about you and your books, they can go to
I think that Georgia, who is the Rebel Angel I'm collaborating with, she's the senior partner of the relationship in that sense. But she's kind of most respectful of me as well. And in another sense, it actually is the apogee of a long 35-year exploration of the angelic intelligence and the telepathic dolphin intelligence and extraterrestrials after I had a near-death experience in 1973, which really alerted me to the fact that, we live in a very small part of the overall spectrum. And when I came back, I sort of decided, well, there's enough people looking after this reality, let me have a look at the other realities. And that started a whole series of books. And this is, I think, probably the 8th or 9th of the books I've written, but it's the first of this series of confessions with this Rebel Angel. The second is actually coming out in October of this year, and I just heard the publishers accepted the third one for next year. So it's a 3 goes at it, and I just couldn't find the voice. I couldn't find the entry point for trying to tell this enormous story in a way that sort of people could grok, people could understand. So when I got together with Georgia, when Georgia got together with me, I should say, about 8 or 10 years ago, I found that what she wanted to do, she wanted to examine her 500,000 years on the planet from the point of view of what went right and what went wrong, how we landed up in this situation. And I said, okay, maybe that's the voice I'm looking for. But let me make a bargain with you, Georgia, I said. And since you've been around observing my life, why don't you tell my life from your point of view? Which, of course, is fascinating from my viewpoint, because I'm discovering things I had no idea about. The sort of stuff that happens behind one's back and over the course of a long life that you have no idea about. So it's very interesting from my point of view. But from the book's point of view, what it does is it grounds the sinuing tale. And as you say, Royce, it's a 500,000-year tale and integrated into my own biography as told by the angel who has been observing my life, or my lives, I should say. So that's very brief summary of a very complex issue.
Yeah, that's the one thing I did notice was the story did alternate between her story of the falling angels and your story of your biography. I was sure you had a reason you wanted it, put in that kind of format, but it was it really kind of like they were both following a similar or a sort of a similar trend, in as much as they were both about learning from karma and consequences.
Yes, absolutely. It was a bargain I made with Georgia because it was a very interesting coming together. I had wanted to tell the story of the rebellion among the angels starting about 20 years ago. And I had,